All right, now we're going to go to CBS News. I want to give you guys the official narrative story type thing on a shooting, tragic shooting that happened in Georgia. It happened in a school. There's some students, there's some teachers adversely affected, and the father and the son are. You're going to see them in the court clip here because they have appeared before court, and this is one of those cases where it's not just the 14-year-old son, because he's a minor. They're holding the father, I guess, responsible. So we're going to learn about this together. And then I also want to point out a little known fact about the story that is not being covered pretty much anywhere. So we went and found something really, really nice for you because in this day and age of how to keep your kids safe, a lot of kids were kept safe in this school because of the school safety officer who was armed. Otherwise, there would have been a much, much, much more tragic as far as numbers. I mean, for the people who lost loved ones, it's not going to get any more tragic than it already happened. But the number of those in these types of instances can be greatly reduced by good guys with guns. That's a theme. The Marxists, the communists, the authoritarians, the globalists, they do not want you saying things like good guys, good girls with guns, because law-abiding people who follow all these crazy firearms laws are not the ones out committing the majority of the crimes out there. So when we're going to take, aim, so to speak, metaphorically at criminals, we shouldn't include the people who are the law-abiding people. We should take actions to curtail the ability of these criminals to be so vicious, organized, and effective in their criminality. And you do that not with less armed people, but by making just about everybody armed. And in some places, it is a regulation that you have to own a firearm because, those types of places can be very safe for people who are trained, conscious, and integrity based. They can protect each other against greater numbers because of that type of organization. So I'm not looking for civil war, but they have made a lot of movies about the purge, and they got this new lottery movie. Have you seen that, Scott? It's got John Cena and the Aquafina chick. The trailer for it, it looks like Fortnite for adults. And basically, whoever wins the lottery, if you can stay alive till midnight, everyone's trying to kill you, you get the money. Otherwise, the person who kills you gets your lottery winnings. And this is America in the near future, in California, where the country has fallen and the economy has crashed, and now it's all supported by this like Running Man type of lottery that they have going on. And it's not the first time, right? There's a book, there's a movie called The Running Man. It's a similar thing. They got one with Jason Statham, Death Race. They got a whole bunch of these dystopian future entertainment, Black Mirror type situations. So if we don't want to end up in those predetermined dystopias, then we're going to need to break out of these molds. And we do it by learning about these situations from multiple angles so that we actually have a true understanding and not just a fragmented, like repeat what you heard on the news type of perspective, because that's how we got in this position in the first place. So we're going to think our way out. And let's go first to, we're going to go to CBS News, then we'll go to Coleon Noir to point out the other side that's not being reported on this tragic event. And then we're also going to cover the next tragic event that happened about a year ago, the Nashville shooting, because that manifesto ties in with the theme in these two school shooting clips right here. Let's go to it.
The teenager accused of carrying out this week's mass shooting at a high school in Georgia made his first appearance in court this morning, and so did his father. The 14-year-old is charged with felony murder in connection with the shooting. He was not asked to formally enter a plea. Police say the suspect used an AR-style firearm to kill 2 students and 2 teachers on Wednesday. 9 other people were injured and taken to the hospital. Barrow County District Attorney Brad Smith says he expects to file additional charges once the other victims have healed physically and mentally. This morning, the judge corrected himself after making a mistake regarding the punishment the accused shooter could face.
I correctly told you the maximum penalty for the crimes for which you are charged. That's correct, except for the fact that you are under 18 years old. So I wanted to inform you and make it clear to you that the penalty for the crimes for which you are charged does not include death. It includes life without the possibility of parole or life with the possibility of parole.
The alleged gunman's father also appeared in court this morning. The 54-year-old was arrested yesterday in connection to the shooting. Sources tell CBS News Colin Gray bought the gun for his son as a gift last December. The father is facing charges of involuntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, and cruelty to children. The judge told him he could spend up to 180 years in prison if convicted on all counts. CBS News has also obtained transcripts from an interview between the suspect, his father, and investigators in May of last year, so before that gun was purchased. The alleged gunman was investigated over posts he allegedly made on social media, threatening to carry out a shooting at his school. During the local police's line of questioning, the suspect was limited in his response. His father repeatedly told officers the two were serious about gun safety and the allegations against his son. Anna Schechter is here with me now in Studio 57. She's the senior coordinating producer for CBS News' Crime and Safety Public Unit. Anna, good to have you here with us on this case. So let's talk first about the arraignment. Did anything notable happen, and what happens next?
Well, we didn't hear from Colt Gray today. We just saw this young boy, 14 years old, walking in with that shock of blonde hair that you saw. He sat there motionless, listening to the judge. After that, we saw his father, the 54-year-old, come in, and he was visibly nervous and under stress. He was shaking back and forth as he was listening to the judge. So we didn't get any information about exactly what's going to come next. But DA Brad Smith did tell reporters outside the courtroom a little bit later that we can expect on October 17th a grand jury to convene. So that gets us into this timeline. We don't have a plea for either of them, so we're also watching for that.
Okay, let's talk about this investigation that happened in May of 2023. I want to go ahead and play some of the sound from the interview between the suspect, his father, and police.
All the school shootings, things that happen.
Yeah, scary.
Hey, are you getting picked on at school? He is. He's getting picked on at school, and is everything okay? That's why I keep going up there.
No.
You know, because you never really know, and I don't want anything to happen to him. So. Mm-hmm.
I read the transcript in one of the interviews between the officer and the father, and it sounds like the teen was saying that a potential raider on Discord, this social media platform, was posing as the alleged shooter, and that was the one making the threats. What can you tell us about what we know about this May 2023 investigation and how it will factor into both of these cases?
Well, it's a really important factor in this case because it goes to specifically the father and what the father knew. And I think that led to, in part, the charges filed against Colin Gray. The fact that he was alerted that his son had posted a specific threat to carry out a school shooting, had posted a photo of a gun, and he did not properly keep weapons away from his child. In fact, 7 months after that interview, he gave his son a gift of not just a gun, but an assault rifle. And so all of that will play into this pattern. If we look back at the Michigan case, the Crumbly case, where the parents were charged in that school shooting, the prosecutor said they weren't charged because their son was struggling with mental health issues. They were charged because he posted on social media. They were aware of his posts bragging about a gun. And immediately after the shooting, they did not tell the school that they had actually just purchased the gun that was used in the school shooting.
Okay, disturbing allegations all around. Anna Schechter, we know you'll stay on top of it. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to tell you the side of the Appalachia High School shooting that the media won't tell you. It was just another typical day at Appalachia High School. Students in their classrooms, teachers going over algebra problems, and the usual school vibe. But then everything changed. A student who had quietly left his second period class returned armed with a rifle. He approached the door to his classroom, but his classmates, sensing something was off, didn't let him back in. That instinct likely saved their lives. The shooter, frustrated, turned to the hallway and unleashed a barrage of gunshots, 10 to 15 rounds back to back, shattering the calm of the school. Panic spread like wildfire as students ducked for cover, trying to find any corner that might offer them safety. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. But amid the chaos, there were heroes, 2 school resource officers, already on campus, armed, rushed toward the sound of gunfire. Within minutes, they found the shooter. The officer who confronted him wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to stop the threat. One way or another, the shooter was left with 2 choices: surrender or face the consequences.
Obviously, the shooter was armed, and our school resource officer engaged him. And the shooter quickly realized that if he did not give up, that it would end with an OIS, or an officer-involved shooting. He gave up, got on the ground, and the deputy took him into custody.
Realizing he was outmatched, the shooter dropped his weapon and surrendered. The SRO took him into custody without further bloodshed. No drawn-out standoff, no more lives lost. That officer saved countless lives that day. And yet, this heroic story barely made a ripple in the news cycle. Now, since no one else wants to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. The good guy with the gun who stopped the bad guy with the gun. I don't understand it. We had Uvalde, where officers stood outside, scared to go in and save those kids. They may have had their reasons, whatever they were, but the end result was devastating. The left-wing media and every Democrat politician jumped on it, telling us that's why we need more gun control. Even the police are there. They don't do anything, they said. We don't need officers in our schools. We need gun control, they say. But now we have a situation where an armed school resource officer did step up, did stop a shooter, and it's like no one cares. People did die, and I'm not downplaying that, but how can anyone deny that if those resource officers hadn't been there, the casualty count would have been astronomical? Yet, you could barely find a story about it. Breitbart talked about it, but when I look at my Ground News Google plugin, who is the sponsor for today's video, I see both the right and the left, of course, covered the story as a whole. But when I wanted to know who exactly covered this resource officer stopping the shooter, couldn't really find anything. The beautiful thing about Ground News is that not only can you see who covers a particular story, it tells you whether that media outlet leans left, right, or center, and then gives you what they call a bias distribution. So you can see if a story is being covered fairly, and you can make sure you're getting a balanced perspective on news stories. I've started using it to keep myself honest in my research. On Ground News, I scroll through the articles looking for outlets that covered the resource officer stopping the shooting beyond a footnote mention, and I only found 2. This shooter surrendered because he was staring down the barrel of a gun. If that officer hadn't been armed, we would have been having a very different conversation right now. But we're not talking about that because the media and politicians, let's be honest, Democrat politicians, don't want to talk about it. And why? Because they don't want to do anything beyond gun control. They say we shouldn't have cops in schools because it makes them feel like prisons.
And then also, again, what we need to do about demilitarizing our schools and taking police officers out of schools.
Well, would you rather have schools feel like Call of Duty battlegrounds where psychos have free reign to shoot whoever they want because there are no cops there to stop them? Kamala Harris, during her presidential campaign, talked about taking cops out of schools. What sense does that make? If you want to keep kids safe, why would you want fewer officers in schools? We live in a country with over 400 million guns, and those guns aren't going anywhere. So instead of pretending like we can wish them away, how about we focus on protecting our kids with ways that we know work? Metal detectors, bulletproof doors, armed resource officers, whatever it takes. Hell, I did a whole video about a device designed to make it easy for teachers and students to lock their doors when there's a school shooting. Guns aren't going anywhere. So we need to make sure the people we're protecting are as safe as possible. But no, the only thing they want to talk about is gun control. And it's the same tired ban assault weapons rhetoric. When there's a shooting and a resource officer doesn't stop it, we get nonstop coverage about how the resource officer failed. But when one does step up and prevent a bigger mass tragedy, it's barely mentioned. Why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. I'm pro Second Amendment, obviously. But if we're going to talk about school shootings, let's really talk about them. Let's talk about how we stop them. You don't stop a school shooter by wishing guns didn't exist. You stop them by stopping the shooter. And that means having a good guy with a gun ready to do the job. We know that works. Armed officers, proper school security, metal detectors, and we saw it work at Appalachia High School. Yet the media treats it like a footnote, because it doesn't fit their agenda, and that agenda is destroy the Second Amendment by any exploitive means necessary. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you, and we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person.
I just did that. Cool.
Do your part.
I'm doing my part. I have an idea. It seems, at least like in the Trump attempted assassination and in this Georgia situation, that guns are leaving a property and that the adults involved, they don't know that the guns are leaving the property. Now, we have little devices and trackers available these days. You know, if your dog goes outside the perimeter, it texts your phone. Maybe we should have those for our own personal items that we want to track. I'm not saying a national database in between that. I'm saying the right as an individual to track my stuff. And if my stuff leaves my property, I can see it left my property. I could do something about it. When people have their stuff taken and then it happens to be used in a crime and they don't know till afterwards, the owner who's been stolen from, right? There's a theft involved there in some of these cases, doesn't have a chance to participate in a positive solution. But what if the technology existed that we could actually have some tracking on our own stuff? And if, you know, it's not a bad idea. Like, you think your guns are locked up. Can you be sure? Well, it's like, I guess it wouldn't read the signal in the safe. Okay, so we could work around these things. You could have a safe that's enabled for these readers, but there's a way that we could track our stuff better. That's one way. And then Colion Noir, Collins is his name, I believe. He was saying bulletproof glass and metal detectors. I mean, the schools it's prison light. It's prison training. It's very similar. Same buses, same cafeterias, same hallways for the most part. We don't have to make them into prisons more, but maybe if things were going on in schools that made kids want to shoot each other and their teachers less. Because there was a time when that wasn't going on, and that this country definitely had access to firearms of the pistol and rifle variety. Also, an AR is not an assault rifle, and people who are ignorant and helpless use those terms. They need to be protected by actual men who show up and know how to use those instruments of peacekeeping. So anyway, when you hear people using ignorant terms like that, just let yourself know that's an ignorant person and avoid them, probably because their causality is like Pigpen and Charlie Brown. It's just always causing a calamity around them, and they never know why it's going on. It's them. So stay away.
Yep. So I had a couple things on that. So
please do.
Yeah, and of course, so like the assault weapon or the assault weapon thing automatically knows who you're dealing with, unless they're fully automatic, like military grade ordinances. Then no, that's not what we're talking about. So anyway, it was funny because like I was like, gosh, did I hear about this on GTW or a different show? So I looked at Clip Gene. I don't think it's on the record, so it's worth putting on the record because I haven't seen it in any of the past episodes. But it's the idea of smart guns. Have you come across this? So
they have to match up to your hand or your chip or your pass or whatever.
Exactly. But then it's like, centralized. They could just say turn it off. Like, oh, you don't get to use your guns today. Sorry.
Not only that, but what happens? I get shot in the arm, and my wife picks up my pistol to protect my family.
Exactly.
Now she can't. So, is she an authorized user? Did I add her to that gun? I mean, those types of things don't have to happen. But I would like to know where my stuff is. That's a useful thing, and it doesn't just have to apply to firearms, right? It could be slightly smaller than an AirTag because that is too big for what I'm talking about. But they promoted RFIDs 25 years ago that were size of a grain of rice, and you could definitely put that on your magazines or on the bodies of various instruments you might have of peacekeeping.
Absolutely. I mean, as a responsible gun owner, I'd might have to look into that sort of thing for sure. Right. But it is worth mentioning too, like the idea, like you never hear of the situations where the responsible gun owner actually saved lives. I just typed in my little perplexity.ai search, like examples of situations where gun owners stopped a shooter and saved lives. There's tons of examples of it, and even talks about right here in 2013, the Center for Disease Control, CDC, released a study that said that firearms in lawful self-defense are used between 500,000 and 3 million times per year. So upwards of 3 million lives are saved each year because somebody had a gun, which is
Think how many times it's not even reported.
Yeah, I was blown away by that figure. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's incredible. So, you always hear about the white guy doing the shooting at the school or the shooting in general, but you never hear about the times that guns were actually used to save lives, right? So
it's also disproportionate because you hear about these, the school shootings, of course, but no one cares about like the shootings that go on in Chicago every week.
Exactly. So
can't mention
that's racist. Things. That's racist. If you want to ask me, that's freaking racist right there. No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about how we solve that problem.
I would say it is racist. I would agree. I would downstream you with your argument. I'd say it is racist, and it must be a blue city, which is run by Democrats who are the racists, doing that to people of color to create those types of situations on purpose. And you don't see Republicans doing that to people of color in their states. So maybe you should move or change who you vote for. Or, just figure out that it's all a big superstition.
Yeah.
And maybe we should participate in reality. Mm-hmm. I think that's more empowering to everybody involved, no matter what your skin color is. Reality is good for all of us. And it's the unrealities by the slave owners that really get us away from freedom. And that's what creates civil war type situations that Jamie Raskin was talking about 20, 30 minutes ago. So there's a lot more to that. But first, we got to move on because we got big stories to cover. And the trans manifesto, I keep trying to avoid calling it a tranifesto, but it'll happen at some point. Nashville trans manifesto released. It is a 90-page document. I'm going to start you out with a little Tim Pool coverage because he reported it first. But Crowder got the journalist on who got it and leaked it and published it, I guess, in this case. And I want to put that in the time capsule so you know where the longer form versions of this are. I think that just hearing the first couple minutes of, these readings from the diary are going to give you a good idea that this young person who did the event in Nashville, that young person did not come into the world this way. And had they not gone to a particular school district and been treated at a particular hospital, probably wouldn't have ended up in this particular situation. But if you, what do they say? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I think this person won all the prizes, including the booby prize. I don't know if that pun is intended or not. In this trans manifesto story, you'll see it just flipped the page. It's one person to another. They got some personalities going on that might be split. All right, so let's check it out and put it on the record because it was not released for this reason that you're about to hear. Like, this is the reason it had to be put out in public, and probably this is also the reason it had to be kept from the public in the first place, which is ironic enough. And the clips are self-disclosing. So let's go to Tim Cast, and then we'll go to Steven Crowder.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tennessee Star has released the manifesto from the transgender covenant school killer, Audrey Hale. This is breaking right now as I record this live. And I'm going to be going through it because as I'm reading this live, I must, there are certain images I think that we can't actually show on YouTube. I do mean that. It looks like for the most part, I will be showing the story. And I will be showing you what the individual said, though I'm not going to go through the entire contents of the manifesto. But there is new information being released. More reporters are now digging through this so we can better understand why this individual went to a Catholic school and murdered children. So we have this again from the Tennessee Star. They finally released this, and we can see. I'll read the story for you on Tuesday. The Tennessee Star and editor-in-chief Michael Patrick Leahy released 90 pages of writings left by Covenant school killer Audrey Elizabeth Hale. The Covenant Killer's 2023 journal, which was handwritten by Hale between January and March of 23, can be downloaded here. Wow, let's see if what happens if we click it. They'll email you the link. Okay, that's interesting. That's a weird way to do it, to be honest. The journal was legally obtained by the Star from a source familiar with the investigation in June 2024. It was recovered. We'll jump down a little bit. It was recovered from Hale's vehicle by officers with the Metro Nashville Police Department, along with a spiral notebook after her March 27, 2023 attack on the Covenant School, where she murdered 3 9-year-old children and 3 adult staff members. Between June 5th and September 3rd, the Star published approximately 50 articles that are based on the writings in the journal, but do not contain the actual pages from that journal. Tuesday's publication of the Covenant Killer's Journal provides further evidence supporting those 50 articles, but also reveals new information, including the octagonal symbol Hale drew when writing about her planned attack at the Covenant School, or her gender identity. Hale, who was 28 years old when she died, was born a biological female but identified as a transgender male. Incorrect. That is incorrect. Identified as a transgender female. I'll break this down for you in a second. At the time of the attack, she often signed journal entries using the name Aiden. If you are a transgender identified male, you are biologically male with male parts who identifies as transgender, meaning you want to be female, but you are not. Identifying as a transgender male is incorrect. She identified herself as a male, but so the terminology is incorrect. And people get this wrong all the time, and it's probably confusing on purpose. They say the octagonal symbol first appeared on the journal's cover. Within its pages, the distinctive shape next appears on the first page, opposite where the killer wrote, "Why does my brain not work right? Because I was born wrong." Now I'm this is breaking right now, so I'm pre-screening this, and we will scroll down. In the image, it says darkness. There's a symbol that looks like the Umbrella Corporation from Resident Evil. Nature. It says PAP ban 2/27/95, 7/13/95. Everything hurts. Wow. Why does my brain not work right? Because I was born wrong. Nothing on earth can save me. Never-ending pain. Religion won't save. Wow. Hale's symbol appears throughout the journal, including an undated entry, apparently written in mid-March 2023, when the killer wrote about the attack she planned later that month. "Soon I will leave this world. You and your friends will be just fine. Does it even matter if I am alive?" Hale later added the octagonal symbol, and above it wrote, "No regrets" by the gun. Wow. I don't believe that I can show the next page. I believe it gets too a bit too graphic, and so I don't think I can show that one. So I will be activating our blur so that you can still generally see it, but it keeps out some of the on YouTube a little too spicy what this person was writing. Shocking, but I will discuss it. It goes on to say the Covenant Journal and the Spiral Notebook were initially called a manifesto. In the manifesto, there are several different writings about other locations. There were locations in it. There were locations. It talks about the school. There was a map of the school, a drawing of how potentially she would enter and assaults that would take place. It's quite a bit of writing to it. I have not read the whole entire manifesto. Our team in the FBI have been working on this, Drake stated. While the Star has not obtained the Spiral Notebook, which is said to contain writings of her operational plan of attack, a portion was leaked and subsequently published by conservative commentator and comedian Steven Crowder last year. So this is this journal. I mean, they've got the full thing. I'm looking at it right now, and I'll read for you what I can. But there are some things that I do believe. It says no regrets. I regret nothing. There's some other, soon I will leave this world. You and your friends will just be first. Wow. I said my last goodbye to you today. Terrifying. MNPD officers accompanied by agents from the FBI and the ATF seized 20 additional journals written by Hale between 2007 and 2022 at the Nashville residence she shared with her parents during a legally authorized search to the courtroom searched on the afternoon of March 27th. Those journals are said to contain about 1,000 pages. In addition, numerous videos, a suicide note, and duplicate thumb drives containing information she may have wanted police to find were seized that afternoon. Rather than an ideologically driven composition, the manifesto comprised it's the killer's journal, okay, the Spiral Notebook found in her car, and 20 journals written between 2007 and 2022 is better understood as a collection of writings in which Hale sporadically wrote her thoughts in the moments and years preceding her devastating attack. Our reporting on the Covenant Killer's investigation has served the public interest, Michael Patrick Leahy, the editor-in-chief of the Star, said Tuesday. We legally obtained writings, MNPD investigation documents, crime scene photos, In June 2024, these documents and photos have helped us inform the public about the underlying reasons for the heinous attack and have helped drive the public discussions on what should have been done to prevent such an act of violence, what should be done to prevent such acts of violence in the future. We have documented a massive failure of the mental health system as a root cause of Hale's reprehensible actions. In a statement released on Tuesday, Leahy said, we have had a First Amendment right to publish these documents from the moment we legally obtained them. They say on April 24th, 2023, in compliance with the Tennessee Public Records Act, we formally requested of MNPD, a department within the Metro Nashville, Davidson County government, that they release all of the writings of Audrey Elizabeth Hale they have obtained as part of their investigation into the March murders. Metro Nashville government denied the request 1 day later. In May, we filed suit against Metro Nashville government in Davidson County, yada, yada. The case assigned to the judge. We get it. They say on July 31st, 2024, we appealed the trial court's ruling to the Tennessee Court of Appeals. We expect to win our appeal.
And you're going to know why.
Well, last night, the Nashville police said they would finally release the manifesto of the trans shooter who murdered 3 children and 3 adults in a Christian school. The big question we all want to know is why now? In a statement, the police department told Fox News, quote, the investigation has progressed to the point where the Covenant shooter's writings are now being reviewed for public release.
And then there was a lawyer and some families and activists who said, no, we don't want this release, tried to block it. Okay, November 6th, 2023, we right here published. We procured this exclusively. And our source, by the way, is as safe as can be, snug as a bug in a rug. We published these 3 pages of the writings that actually provided some illuminating details as to the motivations of Audrey Hale, the shooter, and the radical trans leftist ideology. I hope I have a high death count. Ready to die, haha, signed, Aiden. Next page, Audrey. Kill those kids, 3 exclamation points, those crackers, going to private fancy schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks, with their M-daddies, Mustangs, and convertibles. Fuck you, little shits. I wish to shoot you weak-ass dicks with your mop yellow hair. Wanna kill all you little crackers. Again, bunch of little f***s with your white privileges. Fuck you, f***s. So you see the words white privilege appear. Of course, this person was a transgender individual, and that's why the story kind of went away in legacy media while you helped pick this up and amplify it. Replace the word cracker and white privilege with the N-word or any other racial epithet. Do you doubt for a second that you would have this information? Okay. This brings us to July 5th, 2024, where a judge in Tennessee, Aisha Miles, ruled that the remaining pages of the manifesto wouldn't be released. Here's why. Tennessee courts have determined that unfettered access to every record at any time does not serve to uphold the system of justice that we all depend upon to ensure that the criminal legal system and investigations remain fair and impartial for every involved person. But you did say before this local police, they did say they were going to be releasing it, reviewing it for release. And there was a call to know what happened. Because a lot of people don't want another Vegas shooting where a mass shooting happens and it doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense, and you never hear why. It's also relevant because this was the Trans National Day of Vengeance around this point in time. And in Nashville, particularly in Tennessee, there were a lot of trans laws that were being looked at, and people were being told that it was trans genocide from conservatives. Here's something else. Judge Miles also said in the ruling that the families of the victims owned the copyright over the materials. Okay, this is why this is scary. Yeah. Now, to be clear, it's not all families, and certainly not all family members. And this is where I want to be very clear. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that anyone involved is a crisis actor or disingenuous. Not at all. I want to be very, very clear about that. What I am saying is that I don't know if you know this, tragedies take place, and there are different sets of victims. Those victims are still people, and those people have families who do have ideological motivations. That's why you can have a mass shooting that takes place, and they can be stopped by, let's say, an off-duty police officer with an AR-15, and you can have families of people who were shot still say we need to ban AR-15s. Why? Because they are ready to go out there and push an agenda before the bodies assume room temperature. These families are grieving, and they deserve your prayers, obviously, and your support, but they are not above. They are not above politicizing these issues. So it's very clear to say these are some families with some lawyers. But for the judge to say that evidence of a mass shooting, which captured the public's attention, can be copyrighted, is to say effectively that any evidence involved in any crime that individuals don't want you to see in power can then be put under copyright, and journalism is dead. Think about that. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
They copyright a piece of evidence we don't want you to know. They can now select which manifestos you see, which writings, which influences, and then they can tell you what the greatest threat to democracy is. Well, it's Christian white supremacists. Why? Because everything else has been copyrighted, put under lock and key. If you want to release it, if you want to do your job of due diligence in journalism, you are going to be sued into a federal court because of copyright law.
Yeah. Even worse, the police stations could just copyright their emails. They could copyright internal communications. So there goes FOIA requests for pretty much anything.
Or their family, the families of the policemen with a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's the thing. These are,
exactly.
That's the issue here. The implications are so far and wide, it is spine-chilling. If this would be new law, to be clear.
Yes.
And it would permanently affect investigative journalism. And that's by design. They want to scare you. They want to scare Mud Club Undercover. They want to scare Patrick Leahy of the Tennessee Star into silence, saying, it's copyright law.
Yeah.
You sure you want to violate it? It's an extreme version of what we've experienced here on YouTube, where if we criticize Stephen Colbert, they say it's a violation of copyright, you get a strike on your channel, and it may eventually be removed. No, that's not how copyright works. And this, as it relates to evidence, is certainly not how copyright law has ever been applied.
Right.
Going to bring on Patrick Leahy, but let me give you some snippets here as to what is in the remaining 90 or 80-some pages. Things like no brown girls, no love. These are quotes. I am nothing. Brown love is the most beautiful. And of course, there are other references, as we've already given you, to crackers, to white people, to self-loathing due to trans radical ideology. This is someone who is radicalized. They want you to believe that the only people who can be radicalized are people in trench coats who played Doom at Columbine. I don't know if you know this. If you combine radical ideology with perhaps mind-altering hormones or advice telling you that, yeah, that's right, you're born in the wrong body, and society telling you that, yeah, absolutely, this is wrong, your meat vehicle, your shell, that doesn't represent who you are. It is a descent into madness. And if you have ever experienced a loved one or someone close to you who has circled the drain and descended into madness, you know what it feels like, you know what it looks like, and this very much seems to resemble that. So let's bring on here for the first time to discuss this from the Tennessee Star, Mr. Patrick Leahy.
Opportunity. And I want to tell all your listeners.
Sorry, Patrick, we were stinging you in because we wanted it to feel really cool. But go ahead and say what you said there. We missed the first half.
Are you going to sing me in?
We already did.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
But thanks for being here.
So look, I want to say that the first big break here was yours. Back in November, you got one page from what we're calling the 2023 Covenant Killers Journal, which we released in full today. And then you got 2 pages from the Spiral Notebook, which was the operational attack plan. And we don't have that Spiral Notebook. So you've been following this. Yeah, we've released today, just a moments ago, as we were coming on your show, 90 pages of the Covenant Killers Journal from 2023. This was the document obtained by police. It was left in her car right after she murdered those 3 9-year-olds and the 3 staff members. And then she in turn was killed by Metro Nashville Police. Moments later, they discovered this journal. That afternoon, they went to her house, Steve, and they recovered 20 additional journals going back for about 15 years. So about 1,000 pages all told. We've just have 90 pages.
Well, and by the way, for people who are just tuning in, they can go and support your legal defense fund. Please bring it up there, TennesseeStar.com/donate, because there are some ramifications here with you releasing this, and we appreciate the brass pair that it takes. Let me ask you this, because I know there are things that you can tell us and things that you can't, so don't worry about offending me. You can just tell me to take a hike. What can you tell us about how you were able to?
Yeah, they were legally obtained in June of 2024. Okay. That's how we obtained it. And so you'll notice on the document, we put a Tennessee Star watermark on it. That is so that everybody knows these are trustworthy and they are authentic. Because I'm telling you right now, we illegally obtained these documents from a source familiar with the Metro Nashville Police Department investigation.
Okay. So it's procured legally. That's how you got it.
Yeah.
But now they're saying it may be illegal. It may be copyright infringement for you to actually.
Well, there's two elements to it. The first, as you may recall, back in June, the presiding judge in the Chancery Court, Ashia Miles, called me into court after we published some articles based upon this journal, which we had back in early June. We didn't publish the actual pages, the handwritten pages themselves. And she issued a show cause hearing order for me to show up and explain why she shouldn't charge me with contempt of court. A week later, I showed up, and she didn't talk at all about that. She never showed the court order. There's one court order, but it has nothing to do with us publishing legally obtained documents. It had to do with how documents were submitted to the court.
Right. So yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, she may at some point, she may want to come back, although she's made her decision and we're appealing it in appeals court. She may want to come back and say, oh, I want to revisit that issue. I've got great counsel. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about it because we have every right to do it.
Well, that begs the question, why? Why are they so aggressive in trying to suppress this and ensure that the public doesn't see it? We know from the 3 pages that we had earlier that it painted a pretty clear picture as to motivation, as to obviously this person is insane. There's no doubt about that. But why do you think there's been such a concerted effort to suppress this when, like you've said, this is something that we should have access to and you've obtained legally? Yeah, and just the key point on all this, Stephen, what this shows is a massive failure of our mental health system. That's the real issue. That's the root cause of why this happened. Audrey Elizabeth Hale was treated by Vanderbilt University Medical Center for 22 years for psychiatric problems, and it didn't work. And she'd been on various drugs for at least 5 years, and those were problems. She also, we've got evidence that we reported earlier on, not from the Covenant Killers journal, but from documents we legally obtained from the investigation, that members of Vanderbilt University Medical Center knew that she threatened her father, knew that she wanted to do a mass killing, mass murder at a school, and did nothing. There's a duty to warn, which they violated. So I think there's some concern there about potential exposure by Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Well, it also appears that there's, from what I've reviewed, and by the way, these pages will be available. Not only you can follow Mr. Leahy, but at lighthousecredit.com, we have an article there, and on Twitter. It does reveal some self-loathing. And again, the kind of self-loathing matters where this person, Audrey Hale, describes white nothingness and white privilege embarrassment of self. And there does seem to be a theme of this sort of reviling of whiteness. And of course, this person was white. So would you say that, again, in combination with we had those 3 pages, it shows that there's a bias or some sort of self-loathing for white people?
I think she was so deeply troubled, Stephen. She was troubled about everything about herself, about her sexuality, about her gender, about her competence as a professional person in the world. And she had self-loathing in every regard. She also considered herself a woman who should have been born male. She wanted to be transgender. She wrote about that. She wrote about her imaginary penis and what she wanted to do with her imaginary penis with various females. So a very troubled person who'd been under psychiatric care for 22 years, and that psychiatric care appears to have made her worse, not better.
Well, that was what I was going to say. What we have access to begs a lot of questions, and it begs a lot of questions because we know, if you look from the DSM-5 to the DSM-4 to DSM-5, that we've changed what transgender is, gender dysmorphia, where it used to be someone who has a disorder where someone believes that they're born into the wrong body. Then it became listed as the symptoms of someone who is dealing with being in the wrong body. And so this would beg some questions, right, as far as investigative journalists. What kind of care did she receive? In other words, if she was already unstable and this happened to be a comorbidity, which is how it would be treated anywhere else, Okay, is that how they dealt with it? Or did they say, oh, you know what? This is the root cause of all. You're not mentally unhealthy. You're born into the wrong body. We don't know, but it does seem, looking at these pages, that it gets worse. This is a person who said, I need a trans doctor. The female gender role makes me not want to exist. These are pretty severe words, and I do wonder, how were her doctors treating her? If she goes in and says, the female gender role makes me not want to exist, are they saying, hey, no, you are a woman, you shouldn't hate yourself for that. There's a lot of beauty to be found in womanhood. Or is it, okay, yeah, you're transgender. There are so many questions.
Yeah, and those questions need to be answered. And again, Stephen, this relates to all of the troubles that young children have had in America in the past several decades, all of them that go under psychiatric treatment, they get various drugs that have various difficult side effects. And I think she's an example of how this has backfired.
Yeah, I think it's an example of how not only has mental health backfired, but our system of law enforcement, because the warning should have been out there. So again, I think the reason is not just that this person is a radical trans ideologist, but how did they get to be that way? And when they expressed a desire to commit massive acts of violence, how was nobody in the vicinity made aware? Those are two fundamental roles of these institutions when we're told to have faith in them, and it seems like both failed completely. Not some percent, 100% failed.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We know this from the notes that we obtained legally from the lead investigator, who looked at the results of the search warrant they got from Vanderbilt University Medical Center and said, yeah, she threatened she wanted to kill her father. She wanted to participate in a mass murder at a school. There's a Tennessee law that provides that says that medical professionals and medical institutions have a duty to warn if there's a threat of this nature.
Yeah.
And clearly, Vanderbilt University Medical Center and those professionals failed in that duty to warn because the father didn't know. Nobody knew. And that's a key element, I think, here that Stephen, the Tennessee General Assembly will consider in its next session.
Well, yeah, Audrey Hale wrote in this, what you have released today, this journal, a day without a father will be a better day. Let me ask you this, because there were some rumors out there, some gossip, people saying, no, actually these 3 pages that Malcolm Undercover released, it's not representative of the fact that she was sexually abused by her father. I have heard it from other people. There were reporters saying this. To the best of my knowledge, again, that was pure hearsay. There's no evidence of that.
There is zero evidence. And this is very important. This is why all this information is in the public interest to be released. It actually should have been released. The judge, I believe, in the state court made several very, very bad mistakes. And it should have been released because if you release the information, false rumors are taken care of.
Right.
And shown to be false. There's no evidence whatsoever of any sexual abuse by anybody, either their father or even anybody at the Covenant School. None.
Yeah, that's important to note because that would explain away some of the failures. It wasn't a failure of the medical facilities, the mental health care. It wasn't a failure of law enforcement. This is someone who is tormented by sexual abuse of a father, and that's why it's very irresponsible for people to go out there.
We have not seen the spiral notebook. You got 2 pages of it. There's probably another 80 pages. We'd like to see what that is. That was the operational plan of attack. We've not seen basically 1,000 pages of 20 other journals. And she had some information on thumb drives. Now, we have a legal right to get those. The one exception in the Tennessee Public Records Act is you can't release them for an ongoing investigation. Well, Metro Nashville Police back in March said the investigation would be over in July. Here we are, September 3rd. They're still saying it's not over. That is a stalling tactic.
Right.
It's intended to subvert the law. And the judge's ruling on copyright, a state is entirely wrong. First, the ownership of the Covenant Parents Trust is dubious at best, number one. And number two, a state judge has nothing to say about copyright law. That's a federal issue.
Right.
Now, in theory, perhaps the group that claims ownership, might file a copyright infringement lawsuit against us. That's why we are represented by the Dillon Group in that matter, if that were to come up. But to do that, they'd first have to register the documents. I don't even think they have the documents in their possession, although they claim ownership.
Right.
But the parents of the killer who claim Audrey Elizabeth Hale died intestate, we're not sure that's the case. They told the probate court she died intestate, but there's a suicide note. You can see it right in our journal, right in the journal we released today, or in our previous articles that we released today. There's a note from one of the crime scene photos. Her suicide note said, "Please read my will." Well, where is that will? A reason to believe that a document that could be a will was actually submitted to the Tennessee Chancery Court, but has been prohibited from being released to the probate court. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, it points to a lot of failure.
Yeah, but if memory serves, there was part of the will or part of the notebook disclosed prior to tonight's story, and it disclosed things like special instructions for her stuffed animals and other such adult thinking things. It's sad. It's sad, but it's not the first time or last time it's going to happen. And I used Clip Genie to find other times in this show that I have mentioned something called the Merck Manual. The Merck. So if we go to an episode here called Mass Media Psychosis, we could go in there and we could find some mentions of the Merck Manual. And specifically, there are things that used to be in the Merck Manual as a psychological disorder that are no longer looked at as a psychological disorder. So maybe part of the problem is the changing of these definitions over time. And so these episodes, this one, Black Mirror, and this one, Disney's grooming service, they all had mentions of the Merck Manual, and rightfully so. Go get yourself an older version, 1970s, and see what it was before the definitions changed, was the point of those explorations back then. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the manifesto from Nashville, but it is strange they still haven't disclosed all those documents because it's a ongoing investigation. They can't comment on it. So other people's kids are put in jeopardy because those pieces of information are not being put out to the public by journalists. The journalists are not allowed to put it out because they're not given access to it, which is how they do censorship. It's how the bad guys win. It's how more of these things happen. What do you think, Scott?
I mean, it's so inconvenient for the narrative if something like this comes out, like the Democrat rage. No, I don't know. I actually downloaded the thing while the journal while we were watching that, and I was just kind of browsing through. It's funny, the very last page it says, "Remember me for the good things. Love, Audrey." And it's like she even signed off with her dead name, as they call it, which is very interesting. And I sent an interview request to that Patrick Leahy guy, so I'm gonna try and get him locked in. But yeah, man, it's crazy stuff. It really is. And to me, the story is like, what is this insane like hubbub about keeping this secret, keeping it under wraps, and not allowing this information to get out? You know, I mean, that's to me like the huge story in this. I mean, obviously, because it's like, yeah, we've talked about this on the show before, how it sheds so much light on potential pharmaceutical interventions that were done that could have potentially led to her wanting to carry these acts out, to the possible complication with the LGBT narrative or anything like that. Any and all of these situations, it's best keeping all this under wraps so that people can't scrutinize it and come to conclusions that would be inconvenient to certain narratives, basically. Yeah. So
it's like everybody in the chain of command already knows, like, oh, we can't show this because this would, like, people would see what's going on. Like, it's almost as if they know what they're doing is wrong and wouldn't be accepted, so they hide it from the public. Isn't that very telling when they do that? The elites do it a lot, by the way. Mm-hmm. You can pick up on this. It's a thing with them. It should be very telling to anybody paying attention. I
mean, that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. Anytime that they're trying to obfuscate information, it's because they're doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. That's exactly it right there. That sums up all of it.
They know it's wrong, and they know we would disapprove if we knew. So, like, these are all the things of premeditation on their part.
Yeah. And I'd call back to like just you know, very relevant to this conversation. One of my favorite memes of all time is like, the only reason why the government would want to take your guns is because they're about to do something that you would shoot them for.
Yeah. Hey, you know that the Kamala meme that I dropped in there last night from They Live, where he's got the glasses and it says,
I'm gonna have to scroll up. Hold on.
For war. It said forward.
Oh yeah, I saw
when
that.
he puts the glasses on, it says for war.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother didn't get that meme. So I was like, I have lapsed in my elder brother tutorial on life. You have never seen They Live? Because I even sent him a couple clips. He's like, that's a real movie from back then? I was like, yeah, bro, you should watch the whole thing. It's very symbolic and apropos to what's going on right now. As a matter of fact, John Carpenter, he was a type of prophet in many ways back. You know, he's got like this third-rate movie, kind of really C movie type of genre. But there's all sorts of like interesting things embedded in there, like warning of the future dystopia and how to empower individuals to like see around it.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.